10, 12 feet of bottom of the river that was just completely washed out and downstream. Now you go out there today, you won't see these piers, these posts and piers down there. They're buried again now, but you have to be aware that when you have storms show up, it's a very fluid system, and can cause a significant drainage problems and damage. And that picture is also over here on the wall. You might take a look at that. Next one, Gabe. Okay, just so we are starting and we can talk about things in a manner that we're all reading from the same script. What is a levee? Well, FEMA defines a levee as a man-made structure. It's usually an earthen embankment, but it's designed and constructed to contain water and protect an area from temporary flooding. Now, levees also can include flood walls, and by that I mean a concrete or a block wall that's specially designed to be able to withstand the forces of standing water. So levees can be flood walls. They usually are earthen embankments, but they can be flood walls. Now, however, a levee is not a dam. If you have a dam, that's under different guidelines and requirements as far as regulation than levees are. So just so we're all talking about the same thing, generally the levee is going to be the earthen embankment that goes alongside the creek or river to protect the area behind from flooding in major events. Okay, Gabe. Now, on the certification requirements for levees, we are engaged in the Watershed Protection District right now is engaged in a program to certify levees. Actually, we are in the process of certifying 6 levees in the county. We originally started off with 9, but we have 6 that we are in the process of certifying to FEMA by November 30. Now, November 30 is an important date and was part of the reason why we had to limit the number of facilities that we could because of the limited amount of time to complete the requirements. Now, if you look, there are 6 key components that have to be considered when dealing with certification of a levee. And I'll just go through them briefly. One is we have to have an operation and maintenance plan. We have to have demonstrated plans that show that the facility is being maintained properly and that we are operating it properly. And we have to have evidence of that and submit that to FEMA. Secondly, it has to have adequate freeboard. And by freeboard, I mean that the levee, the top of the levee is designed to be at the 100-foot, the 1% chance or the 100-year storm plus the freeboard. The freeboard in our design criteria is 3 feet. So if we have 100-year, going back to this just for point of reference, if that was the peak of the flood level at 100-year, and that was truly a 100-year event, then the freeboard would be 3 feet above that water surface level, which would take it probably close to the top of the rails of the railroad. Closures. We have to have closures contained. Now, by that I mean levees have penetrations in many cases, and most levees have pipes or drains that drain the area behind into the river or the creek. We have to have flat gates or methods of closing those things during major storms so that the water doesn't back up into the drain and flood the community. So we have to certify those, we have to construct those, and then certify that those are all operational, that they will adequately keep the water out from running back into the community. Another thing we have is embankment foundation stability. Levees, not so much here. These are pretty much all engineered in recent history. The SCR-1 levee was built by the Corps of Engineers. That's one up along River Park. But if you go up into this delta area of Sacramento and the area along the Sacramento River, those levees came into being over a century. You know, they were constructed by farmers. A lot of them just started piling stuff up. And a lot of that material is not suitable, but we have to do an investigation and prove that the embankment material is satisfactory for being a dam, and that the foundation is suitable for sustaining the load from the material that's placed on it. Another factor is interior drainage. Interior drainage refers to the drainage of the runoff, storm runoff from the community through a storm drain system and out into the river. We can't have, while that peak flow passes, as in this picture over here, all those drains are underwater, and so drainage from the community is not getting into the river unless it's pumped. And so we have to be able to have some place for that material to go in order to get back so it doesn't flood the community while that storm elevation is high. Okay, next one. Now, I want to talk about accreditation versus certification. And this is important from the standpoint that we are doing a certification process on levees to FEMA. FEMA does not certify levees. We certify the levees. The owner of the system certifies the levee to FEMA, and then FEMA makes the decision based upon the review of what we submit as meeting the requirements for certification, and then they accredit the levee, and they place it on what's called a firm. Now, we're using the term digital flood insurance rate maps. Those are now D-firms. We refer to them as D-firms. Originally, the firms were the paper maps that were in vogue in the 70s. We're now moving into the digital age, putting them all on computer, and these go on to digital flood insurance rate maps. The bottom line from FEMA's perspective is that if it's a levee that's shown on their system, it must be able to be certified in accordance with all of those criteria that I mentioned to you. So we have to go through a rather exhaustive investigation to be able to make those certifications to FEMA. And next slide. I'm getting warm talking up here, so if you excuse me, I'm going to shed part of this boardroom. All right, on levee certification studies, which we are involved in, as I mentioned, we have 6 that we are working on now. Now this will get a little bit involved. I'm only going to touch on this because it only applies to one of the levees. But we went through originally, we started off in, pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. All right. We went through a period of investigation. We called them a phase 1 investigation, and we did this on 9. We started with 9 levees. We were seeking what was called PAL letters from FEMA, and the PAL refers to preliminarily accredited levee. And that gave us the right then on those 9, and we did get 9 PALs, 9 of the levees. We started off with about 17 that we applied for, well, about 30, but then it got cut down to 17, and now ended up with 9 that were certified to be eligible for PALs. And of those 9, after we started this phase 1 study, which was the initial investigation out there, we realized that 3 of them would not meet the requirements for certification by the November 30 deadline, so they were dropped. And at present we have 6. One of those 6 is SCR1, and we are in process now for the certification of that levee by November 30. However, I must tell you that we have to do a lot of investigative work by that time, by November 30, and make that certification to FEMA by November 30 in order to get accredited. So it's not a given, but we're working very hard to get that accomplished in that time frame. Okay, Gabe, next. Now, this slide is difficult to read. I'll just point it out, but these show the 9 that we started out with, and we ended up with 3 that did not make it. The 3 that did not make it were where we have a Ventura River. The 2 are on the Ventura River. VR1, which is down by the mouth of the river, that did not make it because we had a problem with the rock riprap being buried deep enough into the river. The river had degraded over the last 30 years or so, and so that caused us to not be able to get that work corrected in time by November 30, so that levee was dropped. Another levee that was dropped was what we call VR3, that's up near Ojai, and it was dropped because it has